All right, all right. So I would like to welcome you all. This is, of course, normally our local government call. We've got Katrina Locke and myself as co-chairs on this committee. And today we have a very special presentation by Claire Lewis, who is the Florida Yards and Neighborhoods Coordinator at Gainesville at UF, and she is liaison for the extension agents around the state. And she is also a FGBC board member, and I would like to thank her for joining us today to talk about Florida-friendly landscaping.
Thank you. Really appreciate the opportunity to be here. So I have to make a confession. Here at my house doing this presentation. You may have heard that Richard Spencer is here on campus and causing all kinds of havoc. There's more police officers right now, I think, than students. And I'm not allowed in my building because we're about a half mile from where the talk was going to take place. So I'm at my house. I think I've got my technology all worked out. I've got my dogs locked in the back, so hopefully we won't be interrupted by barking dogs. So Michelle, this will be a review for you, but I'm hoping for some input towards the end of this talk where I go through. What I thought I would do is briefly go over Florida Friendly so that you have a little background on our program and where we came from. And then talk about how Florida Friendly is incorporated into the FGBC certification. So, and it shouldn't take too long. I don't expect this to be real long, but we'll go ahead and get started. So Florida Friendly Landscaping is a science-based education program that teaches environmentally friendly landscaping practices. Everything we teach is based on UF-IFAS research, and it goes through a faculty vetting process before we put it into our principles. And the goal of the Florida Friendly Landscaping Program is not simply just to have a beautiful yard. The goal is to conserve water and protect water quality and protect our water resources. A recent study at UF showed that approximately 60% of homeowner water use is used for in-ground irrigation systems. Landscaping practices, it can impact our water quality. You can see from the picture on the right that shows an algal bloom that can be attributed to some landscape practices. And that, I believe, is the St. Johns River back in 2005, the picture with the green in it. There's some background noise. I don't know.
Yeah, real quick, if everybody could mute their screens. If you have a specific question, you can unmute and ask. But if you could all mute your speakers at this time during the presentation. Thank you.
And also feel free to, if you have any questions, type them in and we'll talk about them. So, feel free to type in any questions. Here's a little video that I thought you might enjoy. It's like 30 seconds.
If stormwater pollution was rubber duckies, it wouldn't matter what went down the storm drains. But it does, because stormwater pollution is not rubber duckies. It's soil, trash, oil, cigarette butts, and pet waste flowing untreated into our water. That's not good for any of us, because we all live downstream. Clean water starts with you.
That was a PSA from Maine called Think Blue. I like it. I think it demonstrates the point well. So the mission of Florida Friendly Landscaping is a tall one. We not only want to provide education, we also want people to actually change their behavior and possibly even their expectations of what they think a Florida landscape should look like. But most of all, we want them to maintain their landscapes in a more environmentally friendly and sustainable way. Florida Friendly Landscaping, or FFL, is comprised of two programs. The first one is the Florida Yards and Neighborhoods program. That's the one that I work under. Our target audience is homeowners and builders and developers. We also, under Florida Friendly, have the green industry's best management practices. And this program, the target audience is green industry professionals, so the people who maintain landscapes and apply fertilizer. In fact, in order to apply fertilizer, they have to go through this training. It's required by law. So both these programs are under the Florida Friendly Landscaping Program, but we teach those same 9 principles, just to a different target audience. We started out with just 4 counties back in 1994. The program has grown almost statewide. We are active in 48 counties throughout the state. And we like to say we're active in every county through the use of master gardeners as well. And protecting our natural resources is such a large issue that FFL is included into the Florida State Statute. 373.185 creates a legal definition of FFL and encourages water management districts to implement incentive programs. The legislative definition states that Florida-friendly landscapes are quality landscapes that conserve water, protect the environment, are adaptable to local conditions, and are drought tolerant. The current legislation no longer references xeriscape. It has been replaced with Florida-friendly landscaping. And this was to reflect the unique climate that Florida has. Because as you know, we go through droughts and then torrential rains. So it's not exactly a xeric landscape. In addition, the legislation passed in 2009 addressed HOA codes and county HOA codes and deed restrictions and local ordinances. And it says that they may not prohibit Florida-friendly landscaping. It's a bit confusing though, because the statute does not invalidate HOA architectural control. So you have to go and get approval through your HOA if you want to make changes. So our need for water is growing every day. You may have heard almost 1,000 people a day move to Florida. And the population is expected to almost double by 2060. Each new resident contributes to both pollution and the increased need for clean water. So on this map, the areas in red are the developed urban areas. This is the projected development increase by the year 2060. Once again, that was in 2005. This is what the state's projected to look like in 2060. So Florida-friendly landscaping is composed of 9 core principles. Each of the 9 principles has a specific practice that's incorporated into a Florida-friendly landscape. There's not really a defined look of a Florida-friendly landscape. It can look formal, it can look informal, or natural, but it's the maintenance of the landscape that is what determines if it's Florida-friendly or not. We have FFL recognition available for residential, commercial, governmental institutions, and new construction. With FGBC, in the past, there's been some confusion on who can provide the FFL recognition. And the way it stands is right now, it's the only way you can get recognized, as FFL is through a IFAS extension agent or trained educator from the county extension office. And the first step in this process would be to review the checklist to make sure you think that your property is going to, qualify for recognition. Then you would contact your local county extension office and set up a site visit to go through the checklist together. If you remember that map that I showed earlier, if the county that you're working in does not have an extension agent, then you call me at the state office and we'll make arrangements for someone to come out and meet with you on site. We also have, Florida Friendly has an MOU with Florida Water Star. So if you're pursuing a Florida Water Star certification, the process is streamlined, and you would just contact the state office and we would do it via email, where you sent in the plans and the pictures, and we could provide a recognition just over the internet. So Florida Green Building Coalition Green Home Certification. FFL is incorporated into W7.2, where there's a requirement to obtain Florida Friendly Landscaping New Construction Certification, and you would get 2 points for that. I'm gonna go through the checklist pretty quickly with you to let you know what's on that checklist. But also important to remember that there's numerous areas of overlap. So you can get points for doing some of the same requirements that are on the checklist, many of the same items that are on the checklist. So you would get those points, and then you would also get the FFL recognition points. The same is true for the commercial building certification, where you can get 2 points for being recognized as Florida friendly. So the FFL new construction checklist has 2 levels. It has both a silver and a gold level recognition. And for FGBC, in order to get the points, you have to meet at least the silver level. I'm going to go through the checklist so you have an idea of what we're looking for in a new construction recognition. This checklist is similar to our residential checklist for existing residential homes, but this one is more focused on the landscape design and installation, where the residential one is focused on maintenance. So these are the required practices for silver and gold level, that the landscape meets state, county, and municipal codes. The site does not contain any invasive plants found on the UF-IFAS assessment within 50 feet of the structure. That there are at least 10 plant species on site. For sites greater than a ½ acre, a soil pH test has been completed and used to guide the plant choices. 2 to 3 inches of mulch is applied over tree roots, shrubs, and in plant beds. The irrigation system meets or exceeds state and local regulations. Irrigation system has a properly installed functional rain shutoff device. And the irrigation system maximizes uniformity with head-to-head coverage. Irrigation system is calibrated to apply 1/2 to 3/4 inch of water per application. Spray and rotor heads are installed on separate zones. On the waterfront, if the site is not on the waterfront, it can get credit for satisfying these practices. But if it is on the waterfront, a low maintenance zone of at least 10 feet is created along the water's edge, or native aquatic plants are located in the littoral zone or on a floating mat. So that's a picture of a floating mat. These are practices for gold level. So the native or the landscape does not contain any plants on the UF-IFAS assessment invasive list, which is a little stricter than the prohibited. The landscape must have at least 15 plants, and a smart controller is installed and operational, and that can be an evapotranspiration, a soil moisture sensor, or other such device. Micro irrigation is installed in all landscape beds and is zoned separately from traditional heads. The landscape installation is consistent with UF-IFAS recommendations as per the GIBMP manual. All downspouts are directed to pervious areas. Native topsoil is saved or reused on site, or parking areas have depressed planted areas or other innovative stormwater treatment systems. So those are the required practices for silver and gold. The next thing that we're going to review is the tiered practices. So in the first tier, the landscape must meet 3 practices for silver and 4 practices for the gold level recognition. Long-lived trees are preserved or planted on site as part of the landscape design. This is because trees improve air quality, they reduce energy costs, and they increase the property values. Plants are located in site conditions that are suited to their needs. This I don't think is a very good example. Another example of something that we try to discourage is beds like this. We would say that these narrow strips of grass are difficult to maintain. If you look at this picture, I think I can do this. If you look at this picture, you can see where they're edging the outside of this planter. They've got a spray head here that's probably broken. The way you would irrigate this little strip of turf would be very different than how you would irrigate the plants within inside this bed. To me, it looks like they're even edging or maintaining this inside edge. So there's a lot of effort going into this little strip of grass that they're keeping right around here, right? So we would recommend that you remove that strip of grass and just either plant ground cover or just, let the plumbago, grow out to more full form. FFL recommended mulch is used on site. Landscape features retain runoff of the property. For example, rain gardens, swales, and berms. So just so you know, this picture right across the street there, that's where the protests are going on right now. That's where all the police officers are. So at least 50% of hardscape surfaces are made of porous materials. A cistern, rain barrel, or other water harvesting practice is used. Shrubs and ground covers are used where grass is difficult to maintain. So the second tier, the landscape must meet 2 practices for silver and 3 practices for gold level recognition. So trees and shrubs are positioned to improve the building's heating and cooling capacity. A compost bin is installed or community compost bin is available for use. Plants that provide native or non-invasive berries and seeds for birds are present. Host and nectar plants are present for butterflies, hummingbirds, and other pollinators. You may be surprised at all the plants that qualify as host and nectar plants. Plants such as pine trees and oaks are great host plants, and kunti. So there's a wide variety of plants. It's not all annuals. 1/5 acre to 1 acre sites have at least 2 shade trees at maturity, and sites larger than 1 acre have at least 4 trees per acre. Existing clusters of vegetation are retained or created in the design. Mulch is pulled away 1 inch to 2 inches from the base of trees and shrubs, and the mulch is pulled off the root ball. So the third tier, the landscape must meet 2 practices for silver and 3 practices for gold level. These include edge of root ball nearest to the foundation is at least 3 feet away. Removed trees are either replanted or recycled on site. Salvaged or remanufactured materials are used for hardscape elements. Tall grasses or other dense vegetation which provide cover and shelter for wildlife are preserved. Man-made wildlife shelters are installed. This can be a water source or a bat house, something like that. Erosion-prone areas are maintained to minimize erosion. Self-mulching areas exist under trees where leaves can remain as they fall. For the irrigation tier, if it has no in-ground irrigation system, the practices need not be met. You would just get full credit. Otherwise, the landscape must meet 2 practices for silver and 3 practices for gold. The micro irrigation is installed in at least 50% of landscape beds and is zoned separately. The irrigation system operates between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. Spray and rotors do not spray onto impervious surfaces or into micro irrigation zones. Emitters are located at least 3 feet from the building and do not spray the building and are unobstructed. Also be not a good picture. Irrigation system has a flow sensor that is connected to the irrigation controller or has a sub-meter. So you'll be notified of if a head is broken. Infrastructure for using non-potable or lowest quality water for irrigation is present. The turf grass and landscape beds are zoned separately. And that concludes the new construction recognition checklist. I hope that was helpful to go through that and to see what we were looking for. Once a property is recognized, you'll receive a sign and you'll receive a letter stating, stating that you recognized, and a certificate. So the FGBC Green Local Government Certification. There are 32 green local governments currently certified, and there are several ways to earn FFL credit in this category, and I'll touch on each of those areas. So in green local government certification, B1, Florida Friendly Government Owned Landscapes, you'll receive 1 point for each 10% of city, county maintained acreage certified as Florida friendly. Under the category of B4, community education, maintaining an active Florida friendly landscaping program, master gardener or master conservationist, you'll receive 1 point. And as you saw on that map earlier, we already have an active program in almost every county. That one should be a pretty easy one to get. Under C4, conserve water resources. If you enact a landscaping ordinance that follows FDEP landscape irrigation and Florida friendly design standards, and of course, at least 75% of the landscape utilize right plant, right place, you'll get 1 point. And for this category, we have model language, ordinance language available on our website to download. So if you need help developing something like that, we have resources for that. Under K1, green public amenities, subsection E, complete the green industry best management practices, GIBMP training. This one also is, as I said earlier, this is a requirement by law. And so that one you shouldn't have any problem getting that. Apply GIBMP, green landscaping and irrigation standards, and proper integrated pest management to public amenities to get 1 point for that. And S5, community education, subset C, create an education program for water use reduction, Florida friendly landscaping, rainwater, etc. I think this is one of the best ways where involvement with the local UF-IFAS extension agent is important, because it can continue the goal of FGBC and have a long-term sustainable maintenance practices on site. I think that's a great role. I wanted to touch back on B1, Florida Friendly Government Owned Landscapes. This one I think can be a bit, I think what I'd like to say is this is where I think we can have a better, protocol on our end. But right now, currently we have 2 different checklists for this. So if you have a municipal property, if you have a municipal property, let me get there. We have this first checklist, and it focuses on it focuses more on the maintenance than actually the new construction. So we'll talk about irrigation practices and fertilization practices. And then we also have this checklist, which is the park checklist. So that would be intended for sites that don't have much in the way of structures or facilities. So that focuses on maintenance practices. These are some examples of communities that have, City of Bonita Springs has a green local government certification. Manatee County has a certification, so there's Charlotte. I worked pretty closely with the agent in the City of Bonita Springs. There were 19 evaluations. 13 of those sites were recognized as FFL. The agent spent a lot of time on reviewing those properties and then suggesting changes and going back and re-evaluating. So that one was pretty time consuming. Michelle, you can speak to this if you're able to, but Manatee County was innovative, I think, that they did a model landscape plan that they used for lift stations. And they had a template that they could just implement when new lift stations were, or lift stations were being landscaped.
I didn't know that, actually.
Okay. Well, that's
Sorry.
That's okay. So in this area, I'd really, hopefully, after this meeting here, we can talk and figure out some ways to work together. What I understand was there were some maintenance issues with those lift stations. So they were put in as Florida friendly, but then they weren't continued to be maintained. And I think a lot of the plants just got removed. So that would be some place where the intent was good, but it just didn't work out. In Charlotte County, I was speaking to the agent in Charlotte County. He said there were some problems with having a person to contact where he knew how to contact in order to turn on the irrigation system and get the irrigation tested. And so just like a central person to talk to. So these are kind of some case studies on those. Let's see. So Florida Green Land Development Certification. FFL is integrated here in A7 Landscape Management Plan. You can earn 1 point for using all FFL plant material that are soil, water, and climate appropriate for non-recreational areas. You can use 1 point for using 80% or more of Florida native appropriate for recreational areas. You can earn 1 point for a detailed management plan for green management of amenities that is consistent with the Florida Friendly Development Codes, Covenants, and Restrictions. We have documents on our websites with example language of that too. And you can earn 1 point in CDR1, Green Construction Standards, for including information on making property purchasers aware of other appropriate FGBC green standards. So I think you would get a point if you provided them with information on the county extension agent and how to contact them and have them, provide educational workshops and continuing education. The Florida Green high-rise residential building, there are no specific FFL requirements, although the requirements follow many of the principles, such as drought-tolerant plants, drought-tolerant turf, no cypress mulch, etc. The W2 installed irrigation, there aren't any specific FFL requirements, although they do follow many of the principles in our certification. And W3, the water source conservation, they also follow many of the same principles for reclaimed water, rainwater harvesting, and I think protection of the stormwaters, ponds. So that's it. That's what I have. I hope I didn't go through that too fast. I was trying to be very conscientious of your time. Please let me know if you have any questions. Okay.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Katrina. I have a quick question for you. So if you're doing a streetscape for a local government, say for example, I'm just using this as an example. So there's not a specific acreage. One, can it be certified? And two, then can it be counted under the FGBC points if that government is certified as the local government?
You faded out just a little bit, but I think you were wondering if a streetscape could be recognized as FFL and apply for the points for FGBC. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
I would think that we would use the checklist that it would be for Here, you want me to go back? Um, yeah, so this one here, because we commonly do recognize medians and things like that, and this could fall into, I think, a category such as that, where you'll have irrigation and you'll have maintenance practices, but there's no real facility, and I think that it would fall into this checklist, and we would be able to recognize it that way.
Right.
Yes, and we have given credit to local governments in the past. Usually the challenge is determining the acreage and the percentage and such. So that's kind of where it comes on the difficulties with determining the size or and looking at the whole county to define that percentages. Some of the challenges there, but certainly can be applied to any landscape there. So thank you, Claire.
Yeah, that is a challenge. And, I know there's some programs out to help, find the area of properties, but also I think just using even like Google Earth and things. I think it's getting much easier than it has been in the past with the technology to be able to determine the size, but it's definitely a real challenge.
So with that, what kind of like percentages and such are we seeing from some of these local governments and whatnot?
I can't respond to that. I really don't know. On our end, what we need to do is right now, each county is kind of dealing with this certification process on their own, and the best way that they see fit, as far as applying our checklists to the property. See if it's the library or if it's the local park. So on my end, I want to develop a protocol for our agents to help them through this process and streamline it and have some consistency.
Excellent. And it is exciting just to see how, so many different areas and entities and organizations that can apply these practices. And, here at FGBC, we're very proud to promote such a great program with Florida-friendly landscaping, and really appreciate what is done over there. And we're really excited also on the education committee, which Ralph Locke is leading up. We're getting ready for a campaign push with some of the homeowners organizations so they can be more educated on everything from, green building materials and energy efficiency upgrades to, of course, Florida-friendly landscaping. And so there'll be a flyer being put together, and we're getting out into some of their newsletters to some of the property managers as well.
Interesting.
All right, any other comments or questions?
So, Bill's got a question.
Yeah, more of a statement. The one thing, especially as a certifier or an FGBC member, is go by and visit your IFAS extension and get familiar with those people, because they can be a lot of help if you get into a buying situation in an HOA area, or you're trying to convince a new homeowner that's building to take the steps to go through this. Sometimes they can do a better job of explaining it than you can. It throws them one way or the other.
Yeah, excellent resources. I know a lot of people say, hey, well, I have this issue with this plant, and they to be able to pick their brain is a huge help to help save some of your landscape, and then also just helps you save money on the watering and avoiding all this pollution with the fertilizer, and excellent resource. And now, of course, as we mentioned, it is state law to allow Florida-friendly landscapes. Even if you still have to apply, it's protected. So thank you very much, everyone. All right. Well, thank you all for joining, and thank you, Claire, for the presentation.
You're very welcome. I hope it was helpful.
Thanks, Claire. It was good.
Thank you,
It was-
Claire.
Yeah, it was an excellent presentation. Is this going to be available so we could possibly copy some of the slides to use in our education efforts?
I'd be happy to provide that.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank
You
you.
too.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.